Lioconvoy here. Last time, we covered Thundercats on the Deception of a Generation special. We're going to cut through a few portions of the special, though, as I'll be enlisting some help with some of those parts later on. That brings us to today's focus, G.I. Joe. Let's get started.
Violence within the toy series in a greater and greater way. Masters of the Universe averages 37 violent acts every half hour. Dungeons & Dragons averages 67 violent acts every half hour. And then there's the granddaddy of them all is G.I. Joe, and which is also matched by Transformers, which does over 80 violent acts every half hour.
Am I going to get a citation for that? Maybe an actual example? No? Come on, dude. The Bible has more graphic violence than G.I. Joe did.
And in that, we compare that to a very violent adult television show which averages 4 to 6 violent acts every half hour, and a cartoon like Bugs Bunny Roadrunner which averaged about 11 violent acts.
I would like to say also that in the Bible, God says that he cast Lucifer, Satan, out of heaven because he was so filled with violence. And we know that in Hosea 4:2 it says, there is swearing, deception, murder, stealing, and adultery. They employ violence so that bloodshed follows bloodshed. I was absolutely amazed recently when I went into the toy stores and I saw that there were complete racks filled with grenades, rocket launchers, all kinds of knives and guns, and I mean squirt guns that are so occultic in that, are not occultic, but violent in that they depict real firearms used in wars. And I thought we would start today by showing you a clip from G.I. Joe.
The violence you described in Scripture was violence for its own sake, as opposed to violence in a reactionary or self-defensive nature. In a previous video, I gave you Scripture about how God himself is a warrior. God doesn't object to violence. He objects to violence without proper reason.
So let's go into like a commercial of a G.I. Joe toy series.
Until now, Jones had it easy, but now it's gonna get real hard. Cobra's hired evil twin brothers, leaders of the Crimson Guard.
Introducing the leaders of the Crimson Guard, the evil twin brothers Tomax and Zaymot, and they're getting away in the Cobra Ferret.
The Joes will stop them.
With the G.I. Joe mini-tank.
G.I. Joe!
Evil twin brothers sold together. Cobra Ferret, G.I. Joe mini-tank, and Joe figures sold separately from Hasbro.
Joe team, our work isn't done yet.
Follow the exciting adventures of the Joe team 5 days a week as they battle the evil forces of Cobra. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. It's the most exciting and
Well, Phil, as we're watching these G.I. Joe commercials, can't we say that they're also helping sell toys and even cereal?
Everything is trying to sell you something, whether it be art, ideology, or a product. This special itself is trying to sell an ideology. You are completely lacking in self-awareness.
Oh yeah, the cartoons and the commercials are helping selling the toys and the cereal.
I think we ought to show the toy to start out today. You know, G.I. Joe years ago used to be a guy that wore khakis and was just sort of a soldier, but now he's taken on an occultic look, hasn't he?
Yeah, they're slowly but surely weaving in the occult, and mainly in the martial arts and different things like that within G.I. Joe.
Firstly, I love how he puts in a disclaimer about how the original G.I. Joe was just an army guy, but then tries to demonize the newer stuff for being different, all while being completely off base. The military has always used martial arts, because any art made for war, by its nature, is a martial art.
Sort of a futuristic look as we see on this figure on our monitor here. He's taking on the look of the future soldier, so to speak.
Very much so.
And a lot of the movies are depicting that too.
I see a real trend toward what I call the barbarization of our children, where through these violent movies and violent cartoons, they're teaching our children that the way to handle problems is through violence.
G.I. Joe deals with a, what was it again?
Cobra, a ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world.
How else would you deal with that? And the show had PSAs to talk about how to deal with situations that didn't resolve in violence.
Come on, throw it! Ow! Hey, I was safe! Ow! Let's get him!
Hold on there.
Cutter! They started it! We did not!
Well, fighting won't stop it. When people disagree, sometimes they need someone who's not involved to settle things.
Johnny could, he's not rooting for either team.
Good thinking. Instead of fighting when you disagree, look for a better way.
Now we know.
And knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe!
You're out of your depth here.
What we're really concerned about is not selling cereal, though. We're concerned about the trend towards teaching the children to have violent attitudes.
Oh, yes, and we see things such as flat gum, you know, that look like shrapnel coming out.
Now, wait a minute. Flat gum.
Yeah, it comes in a pouch, and it looks like pieces of shrapnel. In fact, I was listening to one commentator talk about the feelings within Russia, and he said that the Russians were more upset about this new trend in America, the children wearing the fatigues and being more militaristically minded than they were about our nuclear arms.
You're kidding me.
Yeah, very much so.
In other words, this is a threat to Russia because they see our children being programmed to want to carry guns around and to shoot people and to rocket launch and so forth.
Oh boy, more anecdote. Why would you be upset about Russian concerns while we were still in the Cold War? Are you a communist sympathizer? Someone get McCarthy in here.
And that's what bothered me as I went through the toy stores, seeing that parents were buying all of these occultic toys, from grenades to gum that you chew that's supposed to be shrapnel. Here's a Rambo gun that we picked up at one of the stores. And, of course, Rambo is an extremely popular movie. But this is a squirt gun that's battery operated and squirts 30 feet. But that's not so bad. It's just that children get the feeling that guns are in now, that shooting people is in.
Oh, they really are, and Rambo and other movies like this have glorified violence, and the hero never gets hurt. I mean, he's hardly ever even scathed, you know.
You were talking about G.I. Joe. Now you're talking about Rambo? And what's with that the hero hardly ever gets hurt nonsense? Did you even watch the movie?
It doesn't give a real picture of war. And people say, well, the Bible is a violent book. But if you look at the Bible, the violence took place over hundreds of years, not such in a compacted 90-minute package with thousands of acts of violence, or a compacted 30-minute cartoon with 80 violent acts on the half hour.
You've shot yourself with this one. You had to try to move the goalpost from the violence itself to the amount of violence. And then you do a sloppy job of trying to shoehorn an excuse for you in here. I can guarantee you that even one day of one battle in the Bible had more violent acts in it than the entire series of the original G.I. Joe cartoon. Like Eleazar, who took out the entire Philistine army all by himself in a single day. Quote, next to him was Eleazar, son of Dodai the Ahohite, and one of the 3 mighty warriors. He was with David when they taunted the Philistines gathered at Pas Damim for battle. Then the Israelites retreated, but Eleazar stood his ground and struck down the Philistines till his hands grew tired and froze to the sword. The Lord brought about a great victory that day. The troops returned to Eleazar, but only to strip the dead. Your entire argument here is a joke and you know it. That scripture alone just describes a man with a sword mowing down an entire horde of people and then stripping the dead afterwards. You know, this is also where this series hits some conflict from what I recall as a kid. Because out of all the shows in the 80s, G.I. Joe was all but untouchable in the discussion of if a show is evil or not. A lot of Christian men, fathers specifically, either served in the armed forces or were the kids of servicemen. And while G.I. Joe is fiction, it bears enough of a resemblance to real-world military that these veterans or adults saw it as not just an attack on a kid's show, but an attack on the U.S. military itself. And that would not stand during the Cold War in a U.S. household. It stands even less when you realize that the concept of G.I. Joe as we know it was made by Larry Hama, a military veteran. The subject matter and the arguments get even dumber and shorter from here on. So join me next time as we cover My Little Pony. Someone kill me. Don't forget, if you want any art of any 80s characters or their reboots posted in these videos, just put up your art on Twitter or Tumblr with the hashtag LioFeatureMyArt. I'm sure I'll regret it, but yes, bronies, I'll be happy to post your MLP art in the next video. What did you guys think of what we covered so far? Let me know in the comments below. Special thanks as always goes out to Avis and Mega Umi. You can support me on Patreon for $1 a month. We've got 40 subs to go before I hit 1K, so get ready to win that contest. And I've still got the GoFundMe to join Don Bluth's school up if you want to throw spare change at me. And don't forget about the Thundercats contest at the beginning of the year. That is the due date. So feel free to start submitting things there. You guys take it easy. I'll see you later.